Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us for another broadcast of the Haven podcast. I'm excited for today's guest. I'm excited that you guys have decided to join us on today. Dr. Bradley, thank you for joining us. I'm excited to hear all about you and, everything that you want to share with our audience because I know it's going to be beneficial. So I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself and
Okay.
we're taking from there.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Dr. Bradley Nelson. I'm a retired holistic doctor. I practiced, let's see, I've been a holistic doctor for about 35, 36 years now. Retired in 2004
Mhm.
after practicing for many years. And, it's a really interesting thing. It was prayer that got me into the healing arts. In fact, let me tell you a story.
Okay.
What really started my journey, Brianna, was when I was 7 years old. I was really sick with the measles, and I had overheard my parents talking, and I knew the plan. I knew the plan was they were checking me into the hospital the next day, and I was going into something called an oxygen tent. That's what they'd been talking about, and I didn't know what an oxygen tent was. The thought of going into a tent, that sounded interesting, because I'm 7 years old, right? But I was way too sick to think about camping. And so my folks had made a bed for me on the couch in the living room. We had a 2-story house, and so they had the only bedroom upstairs. So they made a couch for me so I could be near their bedroom, so they could keep an eye on me. And on this particular night, everyone else had gone to bed,
Mhm.
and I'm lying there on the couch, feeling really sick and feverish and nauseated, and just feeling really awful. And my parents walked into the room, and my mother said to my father, she said, "Honey, will you kneel down with me and say a prayer for our boy so he'll be able to get well?"
Mhm.
And so they did. Now, knowing my dad, this is probably the first time in my life that I'd heard my dad pray out loud. He wasn't a preacher or anything like that. He was in real estate and
Yeah, yeah.
construction. But anyway, they were really concerned about me. So they kneel down by the side of the couch. My dad starts offering this prayer. And in the middle of this prayer, something really dramatic happened. This change began at the top of my head, and it went whoosh through my body to the soles of my feet. And I
Mhm.
was instantaneously, completely healed in an instant.
Oh, wow.
And I held my tongue till my dad was done praying, which didn't take long. And when he was done, I said, "I'm better. I'm totally better." And they said, "That's fine. Go back to sleep. Tomorrow you're going in the oxygen tent." And that that experience is burned into every particle of my being. I mean, I remember that event like it happened yesterday, and it was a long time ago now. I turned 67 this year, so 60 years. But I remember it like it happened yesterday. And that taught me a couple of really powerful things. It taught me that, first of all, you can ask for help. There's
Mhm.
a higher power. And if you need help, you can ask for help and you can actually get it. That was one thing. I filed that away. Another thing that it taught me is that healing doesn't necessarily have to take place over a long period of time. It can happen instantaneously. And I know that for a fact because it actually happened to me. I mean, to go from being really sick one moment to
Mhm.
being just instantly transformed to being completely healthy is so bizarre and so impossible that, I mean, the memory of it is just seared into your being. And
Yeah.
that's how that was for me, right?
Mhm.
So anyway, that was the really kind of the beginning for me at age 7. I filed those things away, and wow, I had a really wild experience at age 7. So about 7 years later, I ended up with kidney disease. And I would get these pains in the back that would just knock me to the ground or take my breath away. And it was kind of terrifying, honestly. And my folks took me to the hospital and they ran all these tests. And I found out later that my parents were told that I had kidney disease and that it was about 50% fatal. But there was no medical treatment at all at the time. And they didn't do kidney transplants. My kidneys were fighting for their lives. And if my kidneys died, then that was it for me. I was done.
Mhm.
And so, but it was a scary time because these pains were so extreme and they just come out of the blue. and I never knew when they were, when they were going to hit me. So my folks decided, okay, since Western medicine had nothing to offer me, they needed to try to do something else. And so they took me to see a couple of holistic doctors who happened to work, and this is in Great Falls, Montana, right, where I grew up. A couple of holistic doctors that practiced in a trailer house out on the edge of town in the middle of a wheat field, right? And so we started going to see them. And they were a couple of old-time osteopathic doctors, and they started working on me and realigning the bones of my spine. And immediately I started feeling better, and immediately the pains began to recede. And I knew, I could tell, in my body, we know about, we know what's true. We can tell in our heart, right, what's true. And I knew that what these people were doing was exactly what I needed. And so after about 3 weeks, I didn't have any more pains at all. And my folks took me back to the clinic, and they ran all the tests again. And they said, well, it's a spontaneous remission. It's remarkable. Whatever we did must have helped. And I knew that, they hadn't done anything.
Yeah.
So that was 13 years old. I decided, okay, that's what I want to do with my life. I want to be a doctor like these guys. And practice out on the edge of town in a trailer house. It was fine. And so anyway, then in 1980, I took a class. I was going to college in Hawaii. And I needed one more class to fill up my schedule. And the class that fit was a class on computer programming. And so I took that class. I didn't know anything about computers, but I took it because it fit my schedule. And all of a sudden, I'm introduced to this world of computer programming. And I mean, I was a complete goner at that point. I was a nerd and didn't even know it. And so I became a computer programmer, and I taught myself after that. And I back in the early 80s, or in the early days of the personal computer revolution, right, when the IBM PC was coming out and so on, I was a programmer. And so I had a business called the Computer Tutor. And what I would do is I would go into people's businesses where they would have purchased a computer and didn't know what to do with it because there was no software. I would look at the flow of everything they were doing in their business, and I would write the software for their business, right? And I loved doing that. It was really fun. I had some really interesting experiences. And so I thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life, right? So then one day in 1983, my wife and I went home. It was the winter of 83, 84. My wife and I went home to Montana, where I'm from. And we're sitting around with my mom and dad. And my dad says to me all of a sudden, totally out of the blue, says, are you sure that you don't want to go to chiropractic school, go into the healing arts, because that's what you've always wanted to do? And I said, no, I'm going this other direction. I was about 6 months away from going into the master's program in business. I was going to get my MBA, right, at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. And I'd forgotten all about the healing path. And my dad says, well, why don't you think about it one more time? And I said, well, okay. So my wife made up a pro and con list, of both careers, and they were both pretty long. It didn't really help. But having learned that, there's a higher power we can draw upon, I got on my knees that night and I prayed. And I said, Father in heaven, help me to understand. If you have anything to say about this, help me to know which direction to go, because I could go either way. I mean, both of these futures were really compelling. And now suddenly, I thought I had it all figured out. And now suddenly I'm back at square one looking at this diverging road right in front of me. And so I said that prayer, right? And then went to sleep. So that night I was awakened 3 different times. And each time that I was awakened, I would find that my mind was full of all of these thoughts about how great it is to help people naturally and heal people naturally, right? And serve people. And I would think, well, yeah, but the new IBM PC is a 4 megahertz processor, or some stupid thing like that. And so I would counter every time. And so I still don't know what to do. The next night I'm on my knees again, praying and asking God what to do. And on the second night, I had this experience where I was awakened 3 more times. But each time that I was awakened, the thoughts were like exponentially more powerful than the time before, such that on the third time that I was awakened, on the second night, the thoughts of service to mankind and humanity and the whole world were just absolutely overwhelming. And I heard a voice that spoke to me as clearly as I'm speaking to you right now. And it said, this is a sacred calling. And I thought, okay, I get it. And I didn't know what that meant, right? But I knew that this was the path I was supposed to take. So I did. And when I got into practice as a doctor of chiropractic, I practiced down in Southern California, in Orange County, California. And when I got into practice, I figured, okay, God's gotten me into this, and so maybe God will help me with these people that that I need to work on and help. And so I developed this habit, and the habit was, before I would go to work on anybody, I would just ask the Father in the name of Christ to please help me with this person. And it was really just, I never ever told anybody in all those years I was actually praying for them, but it was just a momentary pause, right? Asking for help. And I'll tell you something. I know that God lives and that he's real and that he loves us and that he's totally aware of everything we're doing all the time. And so, and I know that because there were times in my practice where someone would come in to see me and I didn't know how to approach their problem, didn't know how to help them. And I would offer that silent prayer for help, and information would just flood in from the Spirit, like an avalanche. When God wants to give you information, he can just open up your soul and just pour it in. And he did that to me. Now, this was an unusual thing, right? That didn't happen very often. Over about 20 years, that probably happened about, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. But I learned from that he's totally aware, because the information that would come in would be, here's how you need to look at this, and here's what this is, and here's what's going on, And so it was really an incredible thing. And so as time went on, well, let me back up just a little, okay? And feel free to,
I want to, but I'm so in God, I'm so immersed in your story, because everything that you've said. When sometimes I'm one who says that there are divine appointments, and I've been doing this for quite some time. And what you have said thus far is answering so many questions for so many people right now, because the simplicity of asking God, I need help.
Yeah.
And understanding that he is hearing you. And if you're open to it, he will flood you with everything that you need.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we make it so difficult. But it's just that simple as asking God, Lord, I need your help.
Yeah,
And he
that's right.
will.
It's so simple.
Yeah. And we get so busy with day to day. I mean, I feel like, and my viewers, they understand me. They know sometimes I'm like, I feel like taking off running and shouting, because it's so, we are so busy with doing versus and we're not intentional with just actually asking for help, and then being so intent with hearing and perceiving what we receive. Gosh.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was my secret weapon. And was prayer. The other thing that was really interesting that I need to share is that when I was in chiropractic school, I was still doing computer programming. I was programming the admissions office computers at the school I was going to. And but I'm sitting in class one day, and my neurology instructor starts talking about the brain and how the brain is a computer. And I started thinking, well, wow, the brain is a computer. I wonder if we'll ever have the technology to be able to access the information in the brain, because the brain must know, if it's a computer, it must know what's going on with people and why they're sick and so on. The answers must be in there. And I thought, well, maybe in 200 or 300 years, we'll have that technology, right? Little did I know that that's exactly what I was going to be spending my career doing and unraveling. And so, so as time went on, I learned how to communicate with that internal computer that you could call the subconscious mind, right? We all have a conscious mind, which is where we spend all of our waking hours and do interviews like this and so on.
Mhm.
But then when we go to sleep at night, that conscious mind shuts off. What's left is the subconscious mind, which I believe is vastly intelligent beyond our ability to comprehend, and it's connected in with the light of Christ and the information that is keeping everything going and everything alive that comes from God.
Mhm.
And so anyway, I learned that I could ask questions and I could get answers from the subconscious mind. And so this was just so invaluable, invaluable. I say that right? So
I
it's a
believe so.
hard word today for some reason. It was very valuable to me.
Yes, yes.
Anyway, because what I learned is that the subconscious mind of every single person actually was a computer, and that I could tap into that computer and I could ask questions and get answers about what was going on with them and why they were having symptoms. And it worked so well that as time went on, the patients that I saw, I was able to help people with more and more and more difficult situations.
Mm.
And I found that I could trust the subconscious mind completely, that I could ask questions and get answers. And to understand this, it's really interesting. I mean, if you think about a computer, like, for example, like a phone. Well, this is a computer, right?
Mhm.
And it has an interface. I mean, it has a screen where you can see things and messages, and then you can touch things and type things in, and so it's a touch screen interface.
Mhm.
And that's how we can access this computer.
Mhm.
Now I'm sitting at my laptop here, and it's got a screen where I can see messages and things, and I have a keyboard where I can type things in, and so I can communicate and use this computer. But it took a while for me to figure out how to communicate with the computer that is within each one of us, because there is no screen on the body where it can show you messages, and there's no keyboard for you to communicate things into the body, into this computer. So it took me quite a while to figure this out. But the subconscious mind is like a binary computer. In other words, a binary computer can only answer yes or no questions.
Mhm.
And what we do is we use different forms of muscle testing to get answers from the subconscious computer. Now, your viewers and listeners can try this at home. Okay, for example, here's what we could do. If I were there with you, um, Brianna, what I could do, and I guess you go by Bree.
Yep, Brianna. Mhm.
Okay, great. I'll just call you Bree.
Okay.
So if I were there with you, Bree, what I could do is I could have you hold one arm out parallel to the floor.
Mhm.
And if I put my fingers down here, just above your wrist, what I could do is I could have you make a statement that's true. Like if you were to say, "My name is Brianna," if I were to press down on your outstretched arm, you'd be able to resist me, okay, and you'd be strong. However, if you were to say something that was untrue, for example, if you were to say, "My name is Jill," that's not true. And if you were to try to resist my downward pressure on your arm at that point, your arm would weaken. Now, I would strongly recommend that if you're watching this, you need to try this. Grab a friend or a family member, have them hold out their arm, have them state their name. My name is Brad, whatever, and then try pressing down on their arm, and they should be strong. And then
Mhm.
have them say something that's negative or untrue, like "My name's Bob" or whatever. And then you should notice that there's a change. And so the interesting thing is about this internal computer, if you make some kind of a statement, or even if you think about something that is negative or incongruent or false, there's an immediate change that takes place energetically in the body. And so what I learned is, and I'm not the one that came up with this idea really, but I took it to its ultimate conclusion. There were other people that muscle testing, for example, was developed back in the 1960s by a guy named Dr. George Goodhart, who was a chiropractor, and I'd seen it used by other people. But what I found was that the subconscious mind is actually completely perfectly aware of what's going on with each one of us. So if you've got some kind of a nutritional deficiency, or if you're dealing with some kind of a toxin, or if you've got some kind of a pathogen in your body that shouldn't be there, or if you're dealing with some kind of emotional baggage or a misalignment of some tissue. The subconscious mind was perfectly aware of all of those things. And so I could use muscle testing and ask questions of that internal binary computer. And to understand how this works, I mean, imagine if, well, do you remember the early days of Google where there was a little button that said, I'm feeling lucky? Remember that? And you'd type something in and hit that button and you might get it.
Uh-huh.
Imagine if Google could only answer you. Oh my gosh. Sorry. Imagine if Google could only answer you with a yes or a no.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you'd still be able to get the answers you're looking for, but it might take a little longer. It'll be a different process, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But that's how the subconscious mind works. We can ask questions, we can get answers as long as the answer is a yes or a no. Or in other words, strong muscle for yes, weak muscle for no. So I found that I could ask these questions of my patients. Well, do you have some kind of a toxin that's affecting you? Yes. Do you have a nutritional deficiency? No, things like that. And so I found that, I mean, it was just an incredible confidence builder for me as a doctor, because I knew that the subconscious mind of every patient had all the answers. And it worked so well, this little method, that as time went on, eventually during the last 10 years of my practice, most of the people that I saw had been told there was really no hope for them at all, no cure for them in Western medicine. And yet, by asking their subconscious mind what was really going on, what the underlying reasons were for their symptoms, the vast majority of my patients were able to get well.
Oh,
And
wow.
these are people that have been told that there was no hope, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing could ever be done with them, et cetera. They were going to have to live with their disease. And so as time went on, the way that it worked was because I was kind of a nerd, computer programmer. I always had a computer there with me in my treatment room as I was working on patients. And when I would find something new, either through learning it from some ancient source or modern source, or from revelation from God, I would record it in this system that I was building, this knowledge base. And it was just the most amazing thing. I saw some incredible things. For example, one day a woman came into me that had this cough, and it was a chronic cough, and she's coughing all day long and all night long. She's been to doctors, been to the hospital. They've done all kinds of tests. They can't find anything wrong with her. All of her scans and so on are completely clear. She doesn't have cancer, doesn't have anything like that. But for some reason, she's coughing all day and all night for a whole year. She comes into me and she says, Dr. Nelson, she said, I'm hoping that you can help me, because she said, I'm afraid that my marriage is going to end. She said, my husband moved to the other end of the house a long time ago. And our relationship, this has really been a strain in our relationship. And she said, I don't know what to do. I just keep coughing and I can't stop. And nobody has an answer for me. So using the system that I developed, the body code, I started asking questions of her internal computer, which is really the subconscious mind, which is really just another name for the spirit, right, within us.
Yes.
That is, I believe, is infinite and eternal and so on. And so I started asking questions, and right away, the answer that came back through muscle testing was that there was some kind of a chemical that was a problem here for her,
Mm-hmm.
and some kind of a chemical. So I went to Google, right? And I Googled, common household chemicals. And I got, multiple pages of these chemicals. And so what I would do is I would just, I'm muscle testing her, and I would look at a page on the internet of all these household chemicals, and they were listed, from, A to Z, common things that you'd find in people's homes. I would look at a page and I would ask, okay, is the chemical that we're looking for on this page? And I'd get a no. I'd go to the next page. Is the chemical we're looking for on this page? No. Finally, I got to a page where I got a yes, it's on this page. So I started going through them. And, is it this or this or this? And it turned out, started with a C. And what what went strong finally on her was something called camphofenique. You
Mm.
remember that? You heard of that?
Huh.
Camphofenique. It probably isn't available anymore. It's pretty toxic. It's probably been banned. But anyway, it was kind of a liniment, right? That people would rub on their body.
Mm.
And I said, camphofenique. And she goes, camphofenique? And she kind of turns pale, right? And her eyes got really big. And I said, yeah, camphofenique. Do you use that? And she said, well, yeah, I use that. She said, every night for about a year, we have this elderly woman who's a friend of our family. She's very old. And every night I go over to her house, and it's the last thing I do every day. I go over to her house and I rub her feet with camphofenique. And she loves me to do that. And it was kind of a service that she was doing. And I said, well, I don't think you should use camphofenique anymore. I think that's, your issue. And she said, well, okay. So she stopped using the camphofenique on the elderly woman, and her cough just completely disappeared, right?
Wow.
So now think about that. Her subconscious mind knew exactly what we were looking for, knew exactly what the problem was. If she had been more in tune with her own subconscious messages, she would have figured it out. But I mean, how in tune are most people with their own subconscious whisperings? Probably not. Most of us are just too busy. We're too distracted. And
Right.
so, but we were able to get that information. So that's an interesting story. Let me tell you another one that happened. Really amazing. A woman was referred to me. She came in. She'd been hospitalized for 5 days with this terrible pain in her abdomen. And they had run every test they had on her. All the tests were negative. All the tests showed she was completely healthy. She was about 28 years old, very athletic young woman. And but boy, she was really in pain. Finally, after 5 days in the hospital, they released her because they said, we can't find anything wrong with you. And so there's nothing really we can do to help you because we can't find anything wrong. So so she leaves them, and she finds our office, comes in, and I started doing some testing on her and asking questions. And I found some emotional baggage that she had, and I released that. And I found a couple of other imbalances. And one of the things that showed up with her was that there was some kind of a nutritional issue. And so in what we call it now the body code, this system that I developed. And so pretty quickly here I'm looking at a chart of nutrients, right? And it's divided up into columns and rows. And so I'm asking, okay, there's a certain nutrient that you need. Is it in column A or column B? And I'm able to narrow it down. And it turns out that what she needs is an element is called chromium. She needs chromium. And I thought about it. I thought, okay, chromium is really good for blood sugar, but she doesn't really have major blood sugar issues. So I thought, okay, this is a deficiency. And, it doesn't have anything to do with what's going on with her pain. But and so I said, look, I think that you need chromium. Your subconscious mind is suggesting that that's something that you need. And so you probably should get some. I said, we usually carry it, but we happen to be out of it right now. So, I don't think it's a big deal, but at some point you should get some. And I kind of forgot about it. Well, by the time I'm done working with her, her pain level has not changed at all. She's like a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale of pain. So she's really in pain still. So she leaves the office. She's my first patient the next day. She comes in, and now she's like pushing up against a 10, right? I mean, she's really in pain. And I remember thinking, okay, I don't know how they missed this in the hospital. I mean, the pain was in her right lower abdomen, which is right where the appendix is. And I thought, she's got to have appendicitis. I said, I can't believe that they missed it in the hospital. I don't know. I really wasn't sure what to do because I thought, this is really not a good situation. So anyway, she was there. I started testing her and asking questions again. And out of all the thousands of possibilities that I could have been taken to, I was taken to this chart of nutrients. And I was taken to the column and the row and right back to chromium. Now, remember, I'm asking questions of her binary computer, her internal computer, getting yeses and nos. And so I was able to get those yeses and nos and narrow it down to chromium. And only at that moment did I remember, oh, wait a minute. This showed up yesterday. And I said to her, you know what? I said, I don't know why, but I said, your body is trying to communicate that you really need chromium. And I said, I don't know why. But I said, look, I want you to just humor me. I want you to leave my office right now. Go down the street to the health food store. There's a store about 3 blocks down.
Mhm.
Buy some chromium tablets and ask them for water. Go ahead and open it right there. Don't even wait. Ask them for some water and take some chromium tablets and then come back. Right. Because I wanted to kind of eliminate that as an issue. So 20 minutes later, this young, very athletic, healthy woman is literally jumping up and down in my waiting room. And she's saying, I'm fixed. I'm fixed. She said the instant that she took the chromium, the pain just completely vanished. Now, this is pain so severe, she'd been hospitalized for 5 days, remember? And they'd run every test known to man, and all the tests were negative. But taking that chromium apparently was exactly what her body needed, and the pain instantaneously vanished. And she said to me, how did that, she was so excited. She said, how did that work? And I said, well, I have no idea. I have no idea. And I still to this day have no idea. No one's ever been able to explain why a chromium deficiency like that could cause that kind of pain. And I said, I really have no idea. But I said, look, the beautiful thing about this is your subconscious mind knew that that's what you needed. It knew that that's why you were having this pain. And luckily now we have a way that the subconscious mind can communicate to us what it needs.
Mhm.
That's what we call it now, the body code. And
Mhm.
so this is the kind of thing that you can do. We finally have a way, finally, after all of these thousands of years of man's existence, we have unlocked, with God's help, we have the Rosetta Stone, essentially. We have a way to communicate with the subconscious mind so that it can give us answers about what's going on. And
This
it's the most amazing thing. It's really fun.
Yeah, so I wanna go back to when you said you guys went through this checklist, but you discovered that she had emotional baggage. Can we talk about
Yeah.
that? Because
Yeah.
I think that's important. So if you can walk us through that,
Very
because
important.
how I want you to talk about what emotional, because I'm a chaplain, and so I understand, like, I would walk into people's rooms and they would give me, I have this, people like to talk to me for whatever the reason. They like to spill all their business, right? And so, but I remember going into rooms and with people who were chronic visitors for high blood pressure, but we would talk, and as soon as they got rid of things that they've never told anybody or things they
Mhm.
forgot about, blood pressure down.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so let me explain. What happened was during those years that I was in practice, as I was beginning to learn how to communicate with the subconscious mind and how to ask questions and get answers, one of the things that happened is that I learned that all of my patients, no matter how young or old they were, no matter what they were suffering from, whether it was a physical problem like physical pain or infertility or asthma or some kind of a digestive problem, or if they had cancer, or if they were dealing, no matter what disease they were dealing with, or if they were dealing with things like depression or anxiety or phobias or panic attacks or PTSD or eating disorders, it didn't matter. They all had something in common. And what they had in common was something that I came to call their emotional baggage. Okay. And emotional baggage, to understand how this works, you have to think for a moment about what we have been told by famous quantum physicists like Albert Einstein and other people, that the human body ultimately is made of atoms, right? And if you actually look into that, if you could zoom in on some part of your body uh, and magnify that part of your body over 1,000,000 times, eventually you'd be looking at a single individual atom. And if you look inside that atom, you see there's really nothing in there. It's just empty space, and there's some little infinitesimally tiny energies that are zipping around at the speed of light. And the next atom is a long distance away.
Mhm.
And that's what we are. We're made really of pure energy. In fact, some quantum physicists a few years ago said that if you could remove all the empty space from everyone's body on Earth, you could fit all 7.8 billion people in the world into a box the size of a sugar cube, right?
Mhm.
Now, that seems impossible to us, but to these people who understand the true nature of our reality, that's totally possible.
Mhm.
So if you think about this now, if you think about an emotion, what is an emotion? Well, we know what it feels like to feel an emotion like anger or sadness, but what is that emotion really? Well, we know that everything is energy. Thoughts are energy. Our bodies are energy. Everything in the whole world, everything in the universe is made ultimately of energy. And what we have what we find is that different emotions have different frequencies of vibration. Nikola Tesla said that if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And Albert Einstein said the medicine of the future will be the medicine of frequencies. Now, he was obviously, one of the smartest people, both of those guys, some of the smartest people that have ever lived. When Albert Einstein said that the medicine of the future will be the medicine of frequencies, I think nobody had any idea what he was referring to, except his close friends. But
Mhm.
right, but here's what happens when you're feeling an intense emotion. Maybe it's grief or anger or betrayal or something, frustration. Whatever that emotion is, that's a specific frequency of vibration. If that emotion's powerful enough, then your whole body can be vibrating at that particular frequency of that emotion. And sometimes these emotions are just too powerful for us to deal with. And sometimes we bury emotions because we don't want to go there. And so then what happens is that energy of that emotion stays around in the body, and it becomes what we call a trapped emotion, which is like a ball of emotional energy about the size of a baseball. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, these things can lodge anywhere in the body, and they cause a couple of different kinds of problems. One of the most common things that they cause is physical pain. Now, to give you an idea, let me share a couple stories with you.
Okay.
There was a woman that came in to see me many years ago when I was first kind of deciphering all this. And she thought she was having a heart attack. I mean, she had crushing chest pain. She had difficulty breathing. Her left arm was completely numb, had no feeling at all. The left side of her face is completely numb. It sounds like a heart attack, right? And
Mhm.
I told my staff, look, we were right next to a medical center. And I said, look, we might need an ambulance, but just give me 1 minute with her. And so I brought her into a room and I started asking some questions and testing, right? Using the arm, tapping into her internal computer. And I said, okay, do you have a trapped emotion or like an emotional energy that's contributing to these symptoms? And the answer was strong, yes. So then I looked at the chart, and this is the chart of emotions. And I asked very rapidly, okay, is this emotion listed in column A? There's 60 emotions here. It's divided into 2 columns and 6 rows. I said, okay, is this emotion in um, column A? And the answer was no. Okay, it's in column B. Is it in row 1, row 3? It's in row 3. So is it confusion or defensiveness? Okay, it's grief. That's the next one. And I asked, do we need to know more about this? And the answer was yes. And so I said, okay, did this occur within the last 5 years? Yes. Within the last year, 2, 3 years, 3 years before, that's when this had occurred. And at that moment, Bree, she burst into tears. And she says, I can't believe that's affecting me. I thought I dealt with all that. And I said, well, what in the world happened to you? And she said that 3 years before, her husband had been having an affair, and she suddenly found out about it and confronted him with the evidence. And she had just been totally betrayed. And the marriage blew up, and it was just a nightmare. She was really deeply in love with that guy and was planning on being with him forever, right? But now suddenly it was over, and she'd been betrayed, and it was just brutal. And so she cried and cried and cried about it and had so much grief that energy of that grief became trapped in her body.
Mm.
and a trapped emotion. And so, in fact, she'd even spent about a year in therapy dealing with all of that mentally. And check this out, she had even recently gotten remarried. So, as far as she was concerned, she had a new husband. That guy was just her ex who betrayed her. That was just history. And she was moving on. But the energy, that grief energy that she had experienced, was still right there with her.
Wow.
And so we didn't need to know anymore. And I just swiped a few times down her back, with a magnet to release that energy. That's kind of how this works. And all of a sudden, I mean, the feeling came back into her arm and into her face within 3 seconds. And the chest pain, the difficulty breathing suddenly was gone. And she left the office about 10 minutes later after joking with me and my staff. And after she left, I remember sitting down at my desk and my head was kind of spinning. And I was thinking, what in the world did I just witness? How is it possible that emotional energy like that could create those kinds of symptoms? Well, that's story number one. We now know, by the way, that people actually die of a broken heart. They call it cardiac syndrome. You can die from a broken heart, and it
Yes.
happens every day.
Yeah.
And and so that woman, by the way, I'm still connected with her. It's been 30 years, but she's never had another problem with her heart. And I think, honestly, I'll tell you, I believe that if we had not found that energy, that trapped emotional energy of grief from her betrayal and all of that, if we had not removed that, I think it's very likely that she would not be alive today. I think she would have died of literally of a broken heart failure. Um, who knows? Maybe 20, maybe 20, 25 years ago. I mean, she was really in a bad way at that time. She's never had another problem. And the interesting thing about it is, if she had died from a heart attack or heart failure, um, nobody would have really known that it was her husband's betrayal that actually was the killer, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh my God. I mean, this is fascinating. I mean, just absolutely fascinating. Go ahead with your next story.
oh, okay. Well, the next story, to just help illustrate how this works, a man came into me one day. This is many years ago in my practice, and he had really severe low back pain. He's like between a 9 and a 10 on the 0 to 10 scale, and so I started testing him and asking questions, and right away, from his subconscious mind, I got the answer that there was a trapped emotion that was contributing to this problem. Bree, 90% of the physical pain that people have is because of emotional baggage. It's
Mhm.
unbelievable, but that's true. So, anyway, this was a trapped emotion. So, I tested it using the chart and found the emotion was anger. And the anger, I had to know more. So, we started testing. We found that this had occurred 20 years before. And immediately he said, oh, yeah, he said 20 years ago, I know exactly what that is. He was working for this company and he was falsely accused basically of embezzling. And he was completely as honest as the day is long. And he was so angry about being falsely accused and his pride was so hurt. That emotion of anger was so big, his body couldn't process it and it became trapped in his body.
Mm.
So now 20 years later, he's got this severe back pain. So I swipe a few times down his back with a magnet to release this energy, and his pain level goes from 9 to 0 that fast. And he can't believe it. And he's walking around and bending over, and it's like, where did the pain go? It's gone. And he's bending this way and that way and exclaiming. And I was grateful that it worked so well, right?
Mhm.
Well, he leaves the office and comes back. First, let me explain. When you have a trapped emotion, think about this. This guy has this ball of energy in his low back, this anger that is twisting and kind of distorting the normal energy field of his body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so um, it eventually causes physical pain, and trapped emotions do eventually cause physical pain in most cases. But the interesting thing about it is that was one thing. We released the emotion, the pain instantly was gone. I think it's about 3 days later, he comes back into my office And we're talking, and he says, Dr. Nelson, my back pain is still gone. He said, I still can't believe it. It's like a miracle. But he said, I need to talk to you because he said, when I came in here, I had another problem that I didn't tell you about. He said, for as long as I can remember, I've basically been what you'd call a rageaholic. He said, I'm always yelling at my wife and my kids. I got to watch the road rage. I've been to anger management several times, hasn't really helped me. But he said, since you released that trapped emotion of anger from me, I feel really different. Things that used to set me off don't set me off anymore. I just feel kind of relaxed and kind of peaceful. And he said, I feel really different. How did you do that? How does that work? And at the time I said, well, I don't really know. I'm not really sure. But here's what we believe. Okay. This guy had this ball of energy, this trapped emotion of anger from 20 years before, and it was lodged in his low back. And these emotional energies can lodge anywhere in the body and can cause all kinds of effects. So he's got this energy lodged in his low back. It's distorting the energy field of his body and causing physical pain, but it was also causing something else. You see, emotions are frequencies. So when a situation would come along in his life where he might tend to feel the emotion of anger, like somebody cuts him off in traffic or whatever, all of a sudden he starts to feel that emotion of anger right away. Why? Because part of his body is vibrating at that frequency and feeling that emotion 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for years and years and years. And when we remove that energy, all of a sudden, not only could that area of his body finally breathe, but also now when a situation comes along where he might tend to feel the emotion of anger, well, that part of his body that was feeling that emotion 24/7 now is gone. And so this is essentially how this works. I mean, these bodies of ours, we're finally beginning to learn how important emotions are. And if you think about trapped emotions, the average person probably, if they're an adult, they probably have 200 or 300 trapped emotions in their body. And these emotions are totally distorting their life and interfering with their ability to create the life they're capable of. So getting rid of this baggage, you can see how important it is to get rid of it. And so that's why I wrote the Emotion Code book, so that people can learn how to get rid of this stuff themselves. The whole process is in the book. And it's simple enough that kids can learn how to do it. And we've had kids as young as 11 doing miraculous things just by getting rid of their friend's emotional baggage.
So all of this, we can do it ourselves. And it's wrote in this amazing book. Oh my gosh. So what we are, so within this book, what we're going to find are keys to living a much peaceful life, keys to being able to see the world for what the world really is versus through broken lenses, and being able to freely love without all of the stuff from our past.
Exactly right. I mean, the emotion code is it's an amazing gift, really, that's coming down from above at a time when we so desperately need it, right?
Yeah.
You know what's so fascinating? I'll tell you something. People have told us, and we've got over 10,000 testimonials from all over the world. The book is in many languages around the world, and we've got many, many, many testimonials where people have told us things like, when I started getting rid of my emotional baggage, all of a sudden I felt like I was turning back into the person that I was supposed to be. Think about that. People say things like, until, and see, one of the things that's fascinating about this is that the subconscious mind will often put up a wall around the heart. And that's the most important part of the emotion code, really, is taking down the emotional energy that's wrapped up, that's gotten built up as a wall around your heart to protect your heart from being broken, right? We call that the heart wall. And people find, especially when that wall is taken down, people have told us things like, I didn't know what joy meant. I didn't know what it meant I didn't know what it was to feel joy until that was taken down. Other people have said, I didn't know what it meant to really feel the emotion of love until that wall was taken down, until I got rid of enough emotional baggage. And quite a number of people have told us that for the first time in their life, when they remove that wall around their heart, those trapped emotions, and that's also in the book, How to Do It, that they can feel the love of God for them for the first time in their whole life. Isn't that cool? That's one of the most powerful things I think about this. But
Mm,
but see, there's more to it as well. During all those years, what I found was that emotional baggage was the number one biggest problem for all the patients that I was seeing. And every disease process that we suffer from as human beings has an emotional component to it. And so if you're sitting there right now and you've been diagnosed with something, or if you're suffering from pain, I don't care what it is, depression, anxiety, phobias, panic attacks, PTSD, eating disorders, self-sabotage, whatever it is, there's emotional baggage that's a piece of that puzzle. And you might be doing everything else just right. You might be taking all the right vitamins, and you might be getting lots of rest and exercise and everything else. But if you got emotional baggage, then that's going to handicap you until you release that. And so now we have this method, the emotion code, that anyone can learn. I mean, it's not difficult. Kids read the book and start practicing it on their friends and are getting great results.
mm,
And you know, it's it's a beautiful thing. You know, during the time that I was writing the book, I would pray regularly, and my wife would join me in these prayers, that
mm,
this book would be simple to the understanding of people, that everybody would be able to understand it, even though, you know, we do talk about some you know, some deep concepts in the book, but we keep it very, very simple.
mhm.
Like, you know, like quantum physics and so on. I mean, those are deep concepts, but really the method is simple, it's easy, and and it's changing people's lives all over the world.
I mean, you can really feel that it is. I normally I'm one to interject a lot, but it's just like just listen to what you have to say, because what you are explaining, I can't even articulate the number of people that come into my office that I counsel, and it's like if you just learn to let it go. But how do we let it go? I'm getting ready to do a class with a group of women called "Learning How to Forgive What I Can't Forget." But this book, I'm getting ready to go and ask them to go please purchase this book so that we can all go through it together, because I think it would benefit. Oh, yeah, but this is simply amazing. Because especially after COVID, how many people are now realize that they have been holding on to things that they didn't realize they were holding on to.
Oh,
And it's,
absolutely.
and how it's crippling their lives now. I did want to ask you a question. So when we go through the book and we do what you're telling us to do, it doesn't involve magnets now, do it?
No, now here's the thing with magnets. What we have found is that you can use any kind of magnet. I mean, if you got a magnet on your fridge from your plumber, or a
Mhm,
Hello Kitty magnet, those work just fine to do this. And we've also found that, and we talk about this in the book, you don't have to use a magnet if you don't want to. You can
mhm,
just use your hand. In fact, I'll teach entire seminars and just work on people and just use my hand, because the hand is also magnetic. And so there's something about magnetic energy that's powerful. That
mhm,
when you go through the little process of identifying an emotion and it's ready to be released, then if you're working on yourself, and you can do this by yourself, you can just swipe a few times with your hand or a magnet over your forehead like this, or over your head. We use a meridian called the governing meridian, and it starts at the tailbone and goes straight up the back, over the top of the head to the inside of the upper lip. Meridians are like little rivers of energy in the body, you know, that were discovered thousands of years ago.
mhm,
And you don't have to buy an expensive magnet. You don't have to buy a magnet at all. Magnets, usually everybody's got a magnet somewhere in their house.
yeah,
So, you can use that magnet, it'll work fine. Or just use your hand.
mhm,
Your hand is usually have your hand with you. You might not always have a magnet with you, but your hand you probably will have with you. So
mhm.
that's handy.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's good. Because okay, so when we're praying, so when we do altar calls and the spirit is really high, and so here it is, we are praying at the altar, and sometimes we'll say, "Oh, the spirit is so high." We'll get someone who's immersed in God, and we take our hands, and the person that we're praying for, and what we're doing is this. Well, why are they doing that? But you are putting it in terms where people understand. This is not mystic. This is not crazy. We really are energy filled, and when the energy is ready to be released, our
Yeah.
hands are acting as the magnet to release the energy. So when you see it being done at the altar, or even if you're just having a prayer service at your home, this is what is being done, because the person is up here wanting to be set free. This is amazing. This is amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bree, one of the really cool things is that you mentioned forgiveness.
Hmm.
And one of the beautiful things about this that we find, I have to just share this with you, is that when you remove the emotional baggage, the trapped emotional energies surrounding a person or an event or whatever it might be, oftentimes what we find is that people who could not find a way to forgive now suddenly are able to, because what we're doing is we're removing, in a sense, we're removing the electrical charge around that event or around that person. And so what the emotion go does is it kind of greases the skids for people, the skids of forgiveness, so they can forgive and move on. And it's a beautiful thing, really. And it's this work is it's not about me. God chose me as the messenger to bring
Hmm.
this work into the world, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah.
So grateful. All I've ever wanted in my life was to just be an instrument in the
Yeah.
hands of God, right?
Hmm.
To do his work. And so he's allowed me to do that. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful to your submission to the Lord. I'm grateful for this moment. I'm grateful because you don't even you don't even know what you have just done just in this time, in this time. Um you don't. God is awesome. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful. Um yeah, this is
Me
this
too.
this is this is really this has set me free. um because I mean, even from your stories from the beginning, a lot of times people don't understand that we have been called before we've ever been placed into our mother's womb, and the calling, that it is, we have to do it for, because it's for the greater of humanity.
Right.
um and even when you describe that your father prayed for you and you experienced the healing, you know what I mean, and
Right.
then years later here it is again, and you experience the healing. um and even when you tried to go in your own direction, it was like, okay, your father was so pre-picked for you to keep
He
you on
totally
track.
was. That's right.
I was like, no, not this one. I'm not gonna let this one get away because I need him. So, and it's like God said, okay, Bree, this is your day because what you've been asking me for. So you have you have answered my question that I've asked God for. And so when I tell you this, yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. I
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been really, really fun. And yeah, I think we very much see eye to eye on these things. So God
Yeah.
bless you. And thank you, Bree.
You too. Tell everybody where they can get your book, and where they can find you. We're gonna have links in the description, on Facebook and on all of our podcast audio platforms. And so again, I'm asking everyone, please, 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 go get Dr. Bradley's book, and do the work that you have been needing to have done, because life is so much worth living when we are set free, when we have the ability to freely be our authentic selves without all of the emotional baggage that life brings us, because we don't have a choice into the families that we're born into. We don't have a choice a lot of times with the happenings of what happens to us, but we do have a choice on whether we want to be set free from it or not. And so here's the key, and it's in a book that has been divinely given unto one of God's greatest vessels who has submitted to his calling. And so it would benefit you to go out and get this book. So tell everybody where they can get it, and how they can reach out to you if you're available for, because I heard you say you do seminars. So if they want a seminar done, and so where can we connect with you to?
Yeah, we do live events. We also, of course, this information, our website is at discoverhealing.com. And I also have a site at Dr. Bradley Nelson's, DrBradleynelson.com. And of course, the book's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, everywhere books are sold. It's also available on Audible, so you can listen to it. And then that's the emotion code. And then we also have this book called The Body Code, which teaches you how to use the body code system. The body code system is an app that you can download online, and it's a subscription app that you can get. But a great place to start is just with the emotion code, learning how to do this. All the information's in here. And if you really like this, we offer certification training for people. But we want everybody to use the emotion code all over the world. We want everybody to use the body code as well, because these are methods that have really come down from up above to teach us how to help ourselves and take our health back into our own hands, for the most part. Right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Yeah. I'm such an advocate and such a firm believer in the healing that we need lies within ourselves. And so you have just really cracked the code to how we can do it. And so again, I thank you. I pray blessings upon you and your family, and that God continues to expand your work and expand your territory. Y'all, please make sure you go out, support Dr. Bradley. Look at the links, go find him and download the app. Because we all use our phone, right? So make sure you go and download that app. And again, we thank you for joining us, blessing us with your presence and your gift. And so again, remember everybody, please take the time to share this with someone that needs to hear this, and to those who need to be healed and set free, because sometimes people are just struggling in life and they don't know what to do. I believe that this is going to bless them. Again, until next time, remember, guys, I love you. And as always, I am praying for you.